Welcome, everybody, to another season of Chatting with Wisdom. Chatting with Wisdom is a weekly interview series featuring amazing women. There are different ways that women are amazing, and we're going to celebrate that. So I invite you to join me in my private Facebook group, Mind, Body, Heart, and Soul Connection. And you can also find a similar group on Telegram that I will be using this year to share positivity. So today I would like to welcome Stephanie Dalfonzo. Stephanie was the first automated voice back in the 1980s when she was a celebrity. When she was celebrity radio DJ Stevie Knox. Back then, she hypnotized her listeners to come back day after day for the past 17 years. And as an integrative hypnotist, she has been using her voice to literally hypnotize her clients to making incredible life changes. Stephanie uses hypnosis to help women leaders and entrepreneurs get out of their own way, see the possibilities of where they can go and grow their business. Stephanie is also the author of Goodbye Anxiety, Hello Freedom, available on Amazon. So today we're going to talk about hypnosis, the power to change your life. So welcome, Stephanie. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Rollie. Thank you so much. I really have been looking forward to this conversation, especially after we had to really embrace our wisdom with a few little challenges of getting this scheduled.
It was definitely a little bit of a hiccup, but it wasn't too big of a hiccup. So we just had to postpone and change the date time a little bit. And so, but we're here to be able to connect with women. And so for those of you who do normally join in, we are on Friday instead of Wednesday. And for those of you who listen to us through the podcasting, you've noticed that it didn't get posted on Thursday. So it will be early part of next week, unless Robin has a chance to do that this afternoon. So welcome back, everybody. So this is our first year. And so I'm super excited that the topic is the power to change at the beginning of the year. So like you are our first guest for 2022. So like this is pretty exciting. And we were just talking about it before we came on, is that I have to actually go back and check to see how long that I've been doing the interview series, because I can't remember if it was 3 years or if we're actually on our 4th year, but like it has definitely been some time that we've been doing the interview series. We started off with so it was Monday Whispers Chat. And because Mondays just were not aligning, we actually changed it to typically Wednesdays at 10 a.m. to Chatting with Wisdom. So you were talking about that flexibility, and it is like, that is exactly what it is that we've had to do over the last couple of years, is be flexible, pivot, shift. What is it that we have to be doing, and being able to just kind of go with the flow.
And I think that in my world and the people that I'm connected with, I feel like there was this major, oh my gosh, 2022. And then it was like, oh no, 2022. And, we're all tired of this. 2 years ago when COVID first hit, we all thought it was going to be a couple of weeks, and then we would get back to normal, whatever normal is. And here we are, we're going into the 3rd year of it. And I don't know about in Canada, but I'm seeing all these studies here in the States that, it's really taking the toll on mental health, and especially for our children. And that weighs very heavy on my heart, because one of the things with my book, Goodbye Anxiety, Hello Freedom, is, first of all, Rollie, I was never going to write a book. I was a radio DJ. My communication is with speaking and with, you can see I'm married to an Italian. I'm not Italian, but I still speak with my hands. And so I never thought of myself as an author. And 4 years ago, in January of 2018, I heard this whisper, write the book. And it birthed out of me. Like literally, it was one of those things where within 60 days, without stretching the imagination here, Rollie, 60 days, I heard, write the book, and I published it. And it's got all 5-star reviews. not, me tooting my own horn, but because I had a brilliant editor who, took this very, rough, raw stuff and put it in place. And it was really an outcropping of what I had said for years is I would love to find a way to be able to teach some of these simple techniques I know to calm stress and anxiety to children, teens, and young adults. And I could have never dreamt back then how desperately they would need it now.
Yes.
Again, I'm not sure the differences between the States and Canada, but,
we're on a modified lockdown right now in Ontario. So
okay. So you're stricter on that than we are here in the States. And, I wish that we were a little here, but, that's beside the point. But our kids, where I live in Connecticut, which is a couple of hours north of New York City, the kids, I think, had one day of school this week because they had so many staff that are out sick or, quarantining or whatever. And the bus drivers, and these kids, they're not getting the education that they deserve.
And socialization, like that is, so right now we're on a modified lockdown. Our children are on, so they extended Christmas break or the holiday break, whatever it is that people want to call it, for an extra 2 days. And so they weren't supposed to start till Wednesday. And then they announced on Monday that they are now going back to online schooling. And so our kids are at home and they're not socializing. Parents are stressed because they're trying to figure out how to be able to teach their kids. They're projecting their stress on their kids. And so all this stuff is just happening. And these kids are just lost in the jungle of all of it. And one of the things that I'm really fortunate for is within our mandates is that under mental health, I am allowed to I have a kids stress and anxiety program that I offer to the kids at 3 different age levels. And so the kids can still physically come into the building because when all of these things were happening, it was my first year was we just washed it out. It was okay, we're done. We're not doing any more until things are back to normal again. So then I didn't reset until September. And when I reset in September 2020, I started my first session of, okay, well, we're going to do it by Zoom. And after the first session of Zoom, I could hear a parent in the background that was well, she said to do this and you're not doing this. And I'm okay, this is not working. It's causing me a lot of stress. So if it's causing me a lot of stress, it's going to cause the other kids in the group a lot of stress. And it's definitely causing this other child a lot of stress. And I'm whoa, I can't do this. And so then under our legislation, we are allowed to still have mental health services for small groups under 5. And so I've continued of doing that. So our groups are small, which is good because then we still have that connection. But it's definitely a huge challenge because the kids are walking around not figuring out how to manage. And when COVID first came out and I started, and again, it was the program in September because I think we were still open initially. And so the kids started playing, they were actually going around and they were tagging each other and they're COVID-19, COVID-19. And I'm okay, this is not good. The kids are thinking that this is there's just a whole lot of stuff, but it's just crazy. And so, but it's been very difficult for our kids because our kids feed off of our energy, first and foremost, and then they have all their own little ideas and things that are going on in their head. Yeah. And so it's a really big struggle to have them figure out how to. And so when they come, I try and make it as normal as possible when they're here, simply because there's just so many other things that are going on. So we had, and again, because people are in and out and because of different reasons. And so I had my little kids group ages 4 to 8, and there was only one child that came in. And so we played board games. So we played Battleship. So he had his Battleship thing and I had mine. And then, so we still had our distance and everything was good. And so that was what we did, was we played Battleship. We still talked about how things were going, what was going on, but it was the focus was just normalizing, coming and hanging out and doing something. So
thank you. Because what you are doing is such an important, piece of work in the world. I'm concerned about this generation because, first of all, this is the first generation that has not known technology, right? So I think there's like, several conversations we can have around that, but then add to it that they've never not known life without the devices.
Yep.
And then I worked with an 11-year-old girl who, she was new into the secondary school system here in the States. And that's a tough time. I don't know anybody who said, oh, middle school was the best times of my life, right? Like, no one ever said that. But so here there are these really challenging times. And I don't have a mask nearby, so we'll pretend that this is a mask. They're having to learn to socialize like this,
Yes.
right? And so they're not able to see the whole face and stuff. So I worked with this 11-year-old really on the eyes. And okay, what emotion am I showing now? And I had a mask on what emotion, to teach her how to do that. But for the moms who are listening, something you said earlier about the moms listening in the background, and well, she told you to do this. So I would love the opportunity, through our conversation, to sprinkle in a couple of the simple techniques that I share, for my book, with the caveat that moms who are listening, please, this is when you need to put your oxygen mask on first and then help your kids, because we want to take care of our kids. Oh, I learned this new technique. Let me teach it to my kid, when it's like, oh no, and I've learned this firsthand. Mama, work on yourself first, and then the kids will actually start picking up on it without you having to tell them.
Absolutely. And they will learn. And I know that even like, so I have anxiety. I've had anxiety from the time that I've been little. And so it's always like that chicken or the egg. And so then both of my children have anxiety. So it's like, okay, so is it because of me, or is it hereditary, or is it because of my dad? And they didn't have the experience with my grandmother, but like there's generations of anxiety in our family. And so when my son was 6, my oldest son was 6, we had a young boy in his class that he was on a heart transplant list. And so the kids had learned from the time. So when they started JK, they had like worked with this kid, and he became really good friends with this little boy. And so they were doing all these different things, and they were hanging out. But then when he had to go for his surgery, my son didn't sleep, and he was struggling with sleeping. And he was not the kid that I had difficulty with sleeping. I have another son who struggles with sleep and has always struggled with sleep, but my oldest one never had that trouble. And I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he started crying because he's like, "Well, I'm really worried. I don't know how things are going to go." And and it wasn't surgery date at that point. He had just been flown to Toronto from our community. And so they were still waiting to be able to get that done. So we talked about like what it was that was going on. And at the age of 6, my oldest decided that he wanted to be added to the transplant list. Can you please make sure that I get added to the transplant list, so that if something happens to somebody, something happens to me, that somebody else is going to be able to survive. And so like, these are the things that are going on in this kid's brain at the age of 6.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, so let's talk about it. And we did. We put him on the transplant list because it was his choice. And when his little brother got older, they were talking about it. And so then his little brother said, can I be added to the list? And so I'm hoping that as adults, they're both still on the transplant list. But when they were little, I was the one that was able to put them on that, do that form. And so, but it's just all these things that our kid, like, we don't pay attention to the things that our kids are hearing, and they're only hearing part of what it is that's going on. They're not necessarily or understanding the full context of everything. And like you said, everybody's walking around with a mask. And so it makes it even that much more difficult. And so when somebody sees me with a mask, I go into a trauma response. I really struggle with being in my mask. And so I avoid going out anywhere. So then, and I know that I'm not the only person in the world that avoids going out. And so, but I'm conscious of it. I know what it is that I need to be doing. And so then I'm constantly breathing, pulling my mask away from my face, and doing that when I do have to go out in public. And so when people see, like, so again, little kids, they don't know what's going on. All they can see, and they can see it, they can see the panic on my face and in my eyes and in my body and in my response. And it doesn't matter that it's been almost 2 years. And I was saying that the other day when I actually went out, because I don't go out often, but when I do, it's because I absolutely need to. And when I did, it was like, it's like we're moving into our 3rd year, and I'm still doing the same thing. Like I still have not been able to respond. And I know how to manage anxiety. I know how to be able to do that, but my body just physically goes into that response.
Well, and there's a book by Bessel van der Kolk, MD, and I love that I can say MD because I think that, you would be very well versed in the fact, really, that, what I deal with, when I'm talking hypnosis and all these other
Yep.
healing modalities, a lot of people go, oh, that's airy fairy, that's airy fairy. And when I discovered in the 1990s that I had anxiety, which I did not know that I had struggled my whole life with anxiety. The medication that the doctor gave me worked for a short time and then it stopped. And now what? Right. So that's why I started researching all these ways. So back in the 1990s, I didn't have research I could point to and say, okay, here's some science-based evidence as to, what I'm saying, that our childhood experiences travel into adulthood. People are like, their eyes glaze over. Oh, it's airy fairy. Well, now, again, Bessel van der Kolk, medical doctor, MD, his book is called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's about how the traumas that we experience, whether they're capital T traumas or small t traumas, we experience these traumas as children, and it follows us into our adulthood. The beauty to me of that is I know how to circumvent that. And that is my sweet spot. That's where it's like, okay, there was also, I don't know if you know this study, Rollie, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study.
No.
This was, oh my gosh, Oprah is now talking about this. I talk about it briefly in my book. And 6 days before I was publishing my book, here was Oprah on 60 Minutes talking about the Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs study. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was 17,000 people. So it's a really big, robust study. 17,000 adults. They asked them 10 simple questions. Did you experience this before the age of 18? And it was about, different forms of abuse, addiction in the family, loss of a parent. And that it showed categorically that the higher you score on this quiz, the more likely you are to experience physical and emotional dis-ease later in life. So we're talking, heart problems, suicide attempts, addiction, direct correlation. So that can be pretty heavy. And oh my gosh, like, where's the hope in that? Well, the hope is that what I specialize in is being able to circumvent that whether it's a capital T, and there, this whole quiz was about capital T traumas, which, I think we can agree we pretty much know what that is. Yeah. But these small T traumas are even more fascinating to me because it could be something as simple as, I focus on women entrepreneurs because I think I have a bigger reach in the world. And so when I help someone, a women entrepreneur, break through her mindset where she has no idea what this has been holding her back, it could be something as simple as she's 6 years old in school. The teacher calls her up in front of the class and they laugh at her. Yeah. On a conscious level, it seems like, well, what's the big deal? But that stays with us and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we become adults and we don't understand why we don't want to talk to in front of people, why we're afraid to ask for the sale, why we're afraid to say, this is what I charge. So it's the small T traumas. And he, Bessel van der Kolk talks about that in his book too, that it's not just the extreme traumas, it's these quote unquote seemingly insignificant little traumas too.
And that was really interesting because I have a new young girl that joined my older group. So it was actually really interesting because this week I had one child in my little people's group, and then I had one child in my 9 to 13 group. And so when in my 9 to 13 group is a brand new young girl that has joined. And one of the things that we were just talking and getting to know each other, she didn't know me at all. So it was like that, just kind of getting to know a little bit more intense than showing up at the group, right? Where the rest of her peers are. So it's like having conversations. And that was one of the things that she actually talked about. And I love how the universe kind of brings people around. And that was one of the things that she had talked about, was that where a lot of her anxiety has come from is having had to stand in front of the class and recite And it was a poem, and nobody laughed at her. It was like in that particular sense, but it was just even just standing in front of the group and just feeling intimidated that she was going to mess up. She wasn't going to remember how, because it was supposed to be memorized and like all these other things. And most of us, even to this day, like if you actually watch other professionals and like all the right, like they are teleprompted or they have their script in front of them, or but yet we tell the kids that they have to stand in front of the class and recite a poem or and memorize whatever it is that their speech was, right?
They have to be poly perfect.
Yeah.
Right. So I reached over to grab this. I wanted to show this picture. This is 11-year-old Riley, who had this incredible fear of shots. And her pediatrician has been sending me clients for over a decade now because she knows they have a fear of shots. They come to me, they come back, and they're fine. So, enlightened mother, it's so funny because the pediatrician will say, okay, reach out to Stephanie. And it usually takes them a year or two before they finally do. And this young girl used to have to be held down by 2 adults, screaming, kicking, crying, to get
creating more trauma.
Right. So here she is. You can tell she's got the mask on. So it was recent. And it almost always comes down to, I've never told the pediatrician this, but I know who the nurse is because this is where I used to take my kids to pediatric practice. It's this one nurse, and she's not very nice. And so they have that one experience, and then it gets worse and gets worse and gets worse when, again, that is, I don't know, it's not a small T trauma. It's not a capital T trauma. Let's call it a medium T trauma, but that it follows and gets bigger. It's not like, oh, okay, it just, stays there. It gets bigger as we get older. So when we can circumvent that, that's the exciting part for me of, I hear this adverse childhood experiences and, it's so heavy, and it's like, but it doesn't have to be. That's what excites me.
Beautiful. So tell me a little bit more about, so like, I love how you were able to help, and like you said, like that, and just using that example is all the things that we do to our children to re-traumatize them is something else that's a whole other issue, right? So, but it's just, and like when we talk about small T traumas, like that was one of the other things too, is that people will say, oh yeah, well, like it wasn't really that big a deal. But when you add this one to this one, to this one, to this one, to this one, then it then becomes bigger, right? Yeah. So it's just that those parts of things. And so, so tell me a little bit more about how do you go about being able to help women or children, or men, because we do have some men that follow as well. But as most of my audience knows, I focus on women. And so, but how do we work through some of those challenges?
Not for the conscious level. I can tell you that with 100% certainty.
Okay.
Albert Einstein said decades ago that a problem cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness that created it. So what does that big mouthful mean? It means that our problems get created at the conscious level, and then we try and figure them out at the conscious level, and it doesn't compute. And so if you've ever seen the diagram of a iceberg from the side, you see there's 10% above the water and there's 90% below the water. And that's representative of our mind. So the 10% is our conscious mind. That's pretty limited. The 90% is the subconscious mind. And that's where we access with hypnosis. And it's not, swinging pocket watch, you're getting very sleepy. It's but people do think that. Fortunately, more people are not thinking that. But what you see on the movies and TV, it's all for entertainment purposes. There was a new thing on Netflix recently about hypnosis that I won't watch because I know that it bashes everything of what I do. And what I do is not for entertainment purposes. It's not for entertainment value. It is for healing. And so it's conversational. I'm working with a gentleman from Mexico right now for his golf game. And he's like, I'll watch him. I'll do this thing with him. And he'll be like this, so incredibly relaxed. And then, okay, and 5, eyes open, and he's like this. And he goes, but I heard every word you said. And I was like, I've told you before, and I will tell you again, that you will hear everything I say, that it's not like you conk out and don't hear anything. And even if I could create amnesia, I don't want to, because no matter what we've dealt with in our past, capital T traumas, small t traumas, it's a part of our history. So
Mhm.
if we were to not remember that, we have this blank space where instead, when it's like, okay, I remember that this happened, but it no longer has a charge, it no
Yeah.
longer has a hold on me. That to me, Rolly, is true freedom.
And it really is. And it really does make that huge difference, because people would say all the time, well, I wish that these things didn't happen. And if these things didn't happen, then you wouldn't be who you are today, because
Right.
those have impacted. So that has worked with your compassion, that has worked with your insight, your experiences. Like all of those things play a factor as to who you are as a person. And just um, like you said, having amnesia, like losing that, people lose a sense of who they are,
Right.
right?
And
So
and that sense of empowerment, it would not be there if it
yeah,
was just, okay, we wipe the slate clean and it's not there. You wouldn't have that sense of empowerment. And for me, and I have a sense that we're both very much cut from the same cloth on many different levels, Rolly, is for me, it's all about empowering people. Because when, great, all right, I used to have a trick magic wand when I had my in-person office. I had a trick magic wand because some people would come in and they would come in with this list of 10 or 12 things that they wanted to accomplish in one session, right? And I know hypnosis can help with 99% of them, but not in one session, right? Let's take
yeah.
one thing and work on it at a time. So when they would come in and they'd be like that, I'd pull out my trick magic wand and I'd be okay, and then the thing collapses on itself and we'd have a good laugh and I'd say, okay, so it doesn't work that way. Now let's talk about how it really works.
Yeah. Yeah, and even in psychotherapy, that was one of the things that we would have with clients. They would come in and it's like, well, I've taken the medication and it's not working. Okay, well, first of all, there's a lot more. Like you didn't just need to stay. Like, yes, it helps with. So initially, it's supposed to help with being able to like reset the physical responses that your body's having to whatever stress or whatever thing that's going on. But it's not a forever thing. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is that I don't have to take medication for my anxiety and depression anymore at this point. Doesn't mean that it won't forever. Depends on what it is that happens in life. However, at this point, I've been able to manage. At one point during the last 2 years, it was like, okay, I'm thinking maybe I don't know how much more of all this stuff that I can handle. I might have to go back on medication. But I was trying a few other different things first to see how I can actually manage, because there's so many tools. Hypnosis is definitely an incredible tool that I've never used for this purpose. So like this is actually really great information. I've used
So
hypnosis in different capacities in therapy. However, it wasn't in this context. And so like this is actually really interesting to be able to hear as to how it is that that works from the day-to-day stuff, and how to be able to help with and manage some of those things that just kind of stay lingering in the background.
so I'm going to put you on the spot here
Okay.
as a thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you. I would love to offer you a gift session just between you and me, dome of silence over it, so you can explore these other ways of tapping into. And it's not tapping into the power of hypnosis, it's tapping into your power.
Yeah.
It's tapping into your greater wisdom. And again, it's chatting with wisdom. It's my whole approach. Thankfully, I studied with an incredibly brilliant woman 17 years ago. In my home state in Connecticut, I was looking for hypnosis instruction. And wow, you could go for 2 days on the weekend and you got a certificate. You were a certified hypnotist. And I was like, I'm not sure that's quite enough training to be doing this kind of work. So I started looking, and I looked into New York City, which is about 2 hours from here, and found this brilliant woman who offered an extended training. And she's brilliant. And she's like, oh, no, no, no. Most hypnotists are reading a script. I am not going to teach you how to do that, because I'm going to teach you how to find the wisdom that your client already has and bring that forth. And that is when the true magic happens, is not when we're looking for something outside of ourselves, but when I help you to find that within you. And then again, getting back to that empowering piece of, it's not me sitting here reading a script. If I read the same script to each person I've helped for fear of flying, here's the other picture that I have on the other side of my little girl is Sarah, who had a crippling fear of flying, her words, skydiving out of an airplane. She was 19 when she came to me. Again, it wasn't a big T trauma. She totally changed the trajectory of her life, Rollie. Not only did she go on and fly and skydive, she built a business. Her whole life changed. She built a business very successful as the 5-foot traveler. And if your listeners go and look up the 5foottraveler.com or find her on social media, you'll see this vibrant young woman who, when she was 19 and she came to my office, that was never, not even on her radar. But here we tapped into her wisdom and she was able to find this. I'm not much of a traveler. She's traveled to all 7 continents, to over 140 countries. Right. And, she did that because we were able to tap into her wisdom. It wasn't me saying, well, you're not afraid of flying anymore. That wouldn't have worked for her. And yet there's other people that I've worked with their fears of flying, and it was something different. So it's always about, okay, what is the wisdom within you? And what was that initial trigger that, everybody who has a fear of public speaking, they all have a different trigger.
Yep.
Most of the times, in my experience, it goes back to early childhood. I worked with this 14-year-old, again, same pediatrician that had sent me this 14-year-old girl a couple of years ago for her fear of dogs. And so I was already working virtually at the time. And I told the mother, I said, I work virtually now. She was local. So I said, when I know she's good with dogs, I'd like her to have her last session here in my home, because I'd like her to meet my dog, my sweet little therapy dog, Maggie, first. So the third session, girl came to my house. The mother came back to pick her up, tears streaming down her face as she sat on my couch, petting my dog next to her. It had nothing to do with a dog. Like you would think, of course, if she's got a fear of dogs, because she had some experience as a child with a dog. It had everything to do with her performance anxiety of her very first dance recital when she was like 4 years old. Yeah. So this performance anxiety, we worked together in the fall because she wanted to go to this Halloween party where there was going to be a dog. The mother texted me the next morning and says, oh my gosh, I never heard from her. I went at the appointed time to pick her up. There wasn't 1 dog. There wasn't 2 dogs. There were 3 dogs walking around this party. And she acted like, she didn't even know it was there. The dogs were there. So then I find out a couple of weeks later, I get another email from the mother. And Rollie, God's honest truth, this girl was a freshman in high school. So first year in high school, she was on the cheerleading team. After we worked together, she got a spot on the varsity cheerleading team, which doesn't happen when you're first year, right? Oh, I get this email from the mother several weeks later saying, she stopped throwing up on game days. No one had ever told me that she was throwing up on her competition days, and we're working on her fear of dogs, and here it rolled out for her. So again, these seemingly insignificant small T traumas. But again, I don't have a script that says, all right, let's go back to when you're 4 years old and you're going to have your first dance recital and you're feeling all this pressure, right? So it's tapping into the wisdom that's already within you.
And it really does make a huge difference when we actually tap into that. And the more and more that I actually connect with spirituality, is that using different resources and having those new tools, like those different tools, and being able to have that those responses. And so like something as simple as so I love using essential oils, but I could not get around the smell of frankincense, and I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't get around the of around frankincense, and it wasn't until so I was like, but I would keep trying to smell it, and because everybody kept telling me all the huge benefits of using frankincense because it has some incredible benefits, and so. But what happened is that I ended up going to a funeral, and we are Catholic. I don't know about any other funerals because I've never seen it at any other funerals, but at a Catholic funeral, they always start using the incense. And it's like, so that's where that scent was coming from. That is why I was triggered by it all the time, is because it was only pulled out at funerals.
Right.
Like, we only used it at funerals. So like for me, but I didn't know, I had absolutely no idea, but it was always connected back to that funeral. And so then when I was able to put that, make that understanding of where it was coming from, now I can use frankincense, and I love frankincense, and I burn frankincense. But initially it was like, I can't get past the smell of this. And I couldn't figure out why. It was
right. And why? Like, what? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But then once you are able to figure out what that is and do the healing work around it, again, you wouldn't want to have amnesia for that, because it empowers you and probably makes you love using your frankincense oil even more.
Yep.
So I don't know if you saw me digging out. I've got tons and tons and tons of essential oils, because, again, people like, oh, they're airy fairy or whatever, but they've been around for thousands of years. They found them in the tombs of the
and if anybody is religious, and if you actually go from the Bible part of it, is that they actually gifted, like the 3 wise men gifted essential oils, right?
Frankincense, myrrh, which is another essential oil, and gold. Right. So 2 out of the 3 are essential oils. But also, something you touched on when you mentioned spirituality, and that's something that I spent a lot of my career not really speaking about, because the spirituality is such a huge part of me. Like I'm spiritual, not religious, but my spirituality is not going to dictate where we go with our work together. It's about me meeting where you are. Right. And so I remember this absolutely wonderful woman. I did like a half-day VIP session with her. And she's a very devout Catholic, which, is not where I am. But I met her where she was. We had an incredible, beautiful. And she said, oh, my gosh, you're my spiritual doula. And the spirituality, whatever that looks like to you, that has to come into play for it. Again, however that looks for you, because we all, to some greater or lesser extent, have some connection with spirituality. Again, whatever that means to you. And it could be, having, your faith in nature. And, certainly for me, that's part of my spirituality. I'm fortunate to live 1 house away from a beautiful reservoir. And yesterday on my afternoon walk, I saw a wild bald eagle flying over the reservoir. I see all these, birds and animals in nature. So wherever that spirituality is, it's all right, let me meet you there and see how can that help you to grow, and how can that be a foundation for you.
And it really is. And one of the things that, I get that often, right? So it took me a long time to come out of the spirituality closet, because I would just do all that stuff, like kind of secretly, and like not really talk about it, is that we are, and I love this expression, is that we are all souls having a human experience, right? Because it really is like each and every one of us, regardless of whether it's through religion or through different types of spirituality, like you said, through nature or through whatever it is that looks like, is that it is still part of that connection. And when we forget that, and so like in mainstream psychotherapy, it's like it has nothing to do with, like, it doesn't even come into play, which is one of the reasons why I take a holistic approach when I'm working with my clients, because it does have a huge impact. And so whether you call that spirituality the universe or God or Jesus or whoever, whatever it is that means, is there's that connection. But that also means that there's a connection within us in order for us to be able to have that connection into whatever it is, because we are the authority on ourselves, and people forget that, right? So, and when I say that to somebody, it's like, you're the authority on yourself. So I'm going to teach you tools. I'm going to help you with whatever it is that you need to, but you are the only person who's going to know whether or not that really is right for you. It might feel uncomfortable because you're not used to it. So in that case, then explore it, try it, see where it's at. But if you're like, yeah, that really just doesn't fit with me, then you need to take a step back, because you're the only one who's going to know that that's not what's right for you.
And that initial discomfort, I liken it to when we put a pair of jeans on straight out of the dryer, and they're a little tight, they're a little uncomfortable, but you wear them for a couple of hours, and then then they feel like that second skin. So if
Yep.
someone's listening to this and they're thinking, well, I'm not spiritual, maybe you have some of that discomfort, I would just invite you to think, okay, what could I possibly open up to? What could I possibly learn about spirituality that I might not know about? So part of my spirituality is I'm a devout yogi. I'm of all the millions of healing modalities I've done, I'm also a trained yoga teacher. Not to practice in a studio, but it was always to deepen my practice and to bring some of those parts of it into the work that I do. And so, people say, oh, I can't do yoga. Oh, can you breathe? You're doing yoga. And that yoga doesn't mean it's any kind. You don't have to be a Buddhist or go be in a cave at the top of a mountain. It's just, for me, that's how I can truly connect in the moment. For me, that is a very big part of my spirituality, is when I can actually drop in and be in the present moment. That's a spiritual high for me.
And it really is. And it's something that simple, right? So just stopping and focusing on your breath. And so whenever I start a meditation with any group or with any person, it's like, just focus on your breath, like nothing else. Like, you don't have to be, and you can do that in the grocery store. You can do that while you're driving. You don't have to close your eyes. You can just, okay, what's going on with my breathing? Like, what's happening with my breath? And it really does make that difference. And so, and I'd love to be able to actually get the teachings that come with the yogic practices without having to do the teaching, like having to do the body movements necessarily. But one of the things that I have been trained in is Yoga Nidra, and I use Yoga Nidra a lot, and simply because, and I refer people to Yoga Nidra more than I do a lot of other things, simply because it just helps you take things and as you said earlier, is taking them into that unconscious level. So most of them fall asleep. The whole focus is to stay alert and stay focused, but most of them fall asleep. And when they do, and not everybody, because not everybody gets visual, but when they come back and they share about, like, oh, I saw this bird and it was just fluttering around, and it's like, what does that bird mean to you? Right? Like, it doesn't have to have like some big, huge, like, what does it mean for you? And so then a lot of times they have, so whether it was because of the color or because of whatever, like, there's different things that it actually connects with them. So, like, I love those experiences, and I love being able to share those experiences. And so, but it's beautiful.
And you're mentioning the color and how, we were joking. I was like, oh, we both got the right memo that we're supposed to wear the blue tops, and we're both wearing yoga pants. All the colors, I work a lot with colors as well, because each color has a different energetic signature to it. And so I think anybody can take one look at me and know, what color am I going to recommend, right? I'm going to recommend blue. But if that's not going to work for you, why would I do that? So I'll have you tap into your higher self of, okay, and what color? And I love when people get black, they always go like this, because they think it's a bad color. And yet black is a color of strength and protection. And as we're going into year 3 of this pandemic, who doesn't want strength and protection?
Yeah.
Blue, intentional. It's totally intentional on my part that you will always see me in blue windscreen, blue bird behind me to remind you to spread your wings and fly. Blue is calming and tranquil. Pink is the color of unconditional love. So each of the colors has these different energetic signatures to them. So when I'm stacking, and you had said something earlier that made me think, we were talking about psychotherapy and how you have these other things. I believe in stacking as much as we can, that there is not one right way. I don't say hypnosis is the only way. If, you were talking about medication, if you need medication, use the medication. And what else can you add to that?
Absolutely.
It's finding the combination, because there is no one size fits all. right? We know that. So it's finding what works for you. And again, I bring in the essential oils. I use essential oils surrogately with my clients. So I'll be putting the essential oils on or smelling it, and they're getting the benefits, of what is helping with that session. All right. And the color. All right. Again, now you don't have to see the color. It's already like coded in your subconscious
Yeah.
mind, and it's always there, just washing those energies through you. I had a client yesterday. This was really interesting. Sometimes when I do groups, and this was a one-on-one, but sometimes when I do groups, a couple of people will get two colors. So I go, okay, when we go through the two colors, rarely I'll get somebody with three. This client yesterday had four colors come in. So I was like, whoa, you hit the jackpot. And we're going through all the different signatures. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So it's, again, finding what works and finding how a lot of what I do, it's in the background. So you're not having to consciously think about, all right, I have to do this, because that's work and that's not fun.
Yeah. And then we put so many, like our ego then kicks in. So, right. So on top of that, then our ego kicks in, and then it's like, okay, so I'm supposed to do this. And it's like, is this right? Or is this right? And that's one of the other things that I say to my clients all the time is that there's no right and wrong. Like, and you mentioned that as well. There's no right and wrong. It all depends on you. And what's right for me isn't necessarily going to be right for you. And so just really important for us to be able to tap into of where is it that it's going. And I'm just looking at the time, and I absolutely can't believe we've gone 45 minutes. This is crazy. So I try and limit into around 30 minutes. However, sometimes these conversations just kind of go beyond, and this is just definitely one of those conversations that goes beyond. And so, and it really is that important. So the title that you've chosen for today's topic was The Power to Change Your Life. And just in these 45 minutes, we've talked about so many ways of being able to connect. And so Christine says, you are a wonderful Yoga Nidra moderator. Thank you. And she also says, it's been amazing. So we've had people kind of coming in and out and of the conversation. And so if you're catching the replay, then definitely join in the conversation. We'd love to have you join in the conversation. But like, this has been absolutely incredible, Stephanie. And I know that it has been, and obviously it's part of my own passions, right? So, right. So if it fits into that whole finding ways of being able to find the ability within ourselves to be able to kind of step out and being able to share that with whatever it is that we learn, that our kids can learn and our grandchildren can learn. And if we don't have any of those, the kids in the community can learn, because this generation, as you stated at the beginning, really are going to need a lot of our help. And so whatever it is that looks like for us in terms of the children in this realm, definitely need our support of being able to get us to that next level without being told you have to do this, because that's just going to create more anxiety. But just by modeling and showing the different things that we have going on and how we're shifting the ways of being able to take things. And so, like, even going back to the conversation of the initial of us having to try and figure out how to be able to navigate the time. Life was just happening, and there was just different things that were not allowing us to schedule on that particular time. But I'm a strong believer in things happen for a reason. And so, and the good with the bad, but the whatever it is that happened is that somebody needed to come across this today. Yes. Whereas if we would have done it on Wednesday, they would not have come across it. So, and so there is somebody today that has heard our message, heard our conversation, that has had something that has turned on a light bulb for them, and that they have been able to get some small piece of wisdom from today's conversation. Not that it wouldn't have happened on Wednesday, but specifically somebody needed it to happen today.
And that's always my greatest hope, Rollie, is if I can say something that has an impact on at least one person, then I've done good. And really, it's that. It's not about let's go to the masses. It's if I can touch one person and you can touch one person, it ripples out.
Absolutely.
And if I can just share one more piece, if there's somebody who's listening who's like, okay, this is all great, and I just don't know where to start, find the smallest step possible and start there. If it's as simple as stopping, focusing on your breath and thinking, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, then you've already started.
Yep. So is there anything that you want to be able to share with the audience today? So in the comments, I shared the link. I went on to Amazon and went and found the link for your book. But is there anything else that you wanted people to be able to connect with you, or that you were offering that somebody may be interested in taking on with?
Yeah, thank you. There's if they go to the number 5 easy ways to calm anxiety.com, you'll get 5 of the techniques from my book for free. No spamming or whatever. It's just, okay, here are 5 really simple ways for you to start playing with. And again, mamas listening, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, start with yourself, and then you can share with your kids. But
Absolutely.
take care of yourself first.
And what was that? Because I'm actually going to put the link in the in this chat. So 5
Okay.
easy ways.
Number 5, easy ways to calm anxiety.com.
Anxiety. Okay, so I'm going to go and pull it in.
I could sit and chat with you for days, Rollie.
Well, it has been, like I said, the conversation has been, and we could have gone in many different directions. And that is what I love about Chatting with Wisdom, is that we have that opportunity to be able to just simply have conversations about whatever it is. So like, it's never scripted. It's never planned out as to who, what, where, or how. And so each guest always has that opportunity to tell me, what do they want to talk about? They give me, like, that's the only part that's scripted, is the introduction, which I don't always read well. And but and then everything else is just based on, like, where do we go from the conversation? And so, and it comes up naturally. So like, if I were to meet you on the street, you wouldn't have a script behind you, that you would have all these points, talking points of what it is that you wanted to be able to say. And so that is exactly what it is coming into each other's space, where we have that conversation, and we get to have the true nature of the conversation as to where it is that it's going. And I have yet to have that fail in terms of conversations. Out of all of the people that I have had the opportunity to chat with, is there's only been one that I struggled with being able to, like, continue the conversation and keeping it going. And simply because it was something that that didn't resonate for me in terms of a tool that was being shared, or the information that was being shared. And however, despite the fact that I was struggling with that call, is that I received so much feedback of, oh my God, that person was so amazing, and I can't believe, right? So it didn't resonate for me, but just because it doesn't resonate for me doesn't mean that it's like, I don't have to own it. It's not mine to own, right? So,
and that is a true definition of wisdom.
So thank you. So thanks again, everybody. So we should be on time. However, the person who is supposed to be joining, I did send them a message because I noticed that they are in, I believe, the UK, but over on the other side of us. And so I did send an invite to potentially change the time. Simply because of the time zone. However, a lot of times they still jump on anyway. It's all good for them. Some of them show up in their pajamas. We're all good. So I'm not sure whether or not, but at this point it is at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, but just keep watch, and you'll notice if something changes in terms of the time. But this was amazing, Stephanie. I'd invite you to come back again sometime this year. However, all of the spots are filled for this year, but I would still love to be able to have further conversations with you. We have our Women Inspiring Women conference that's coming up. So Robin is working on the speaker packages. And so that will be going out to all of our Chatting with Wisdom guests as well, so that they are aware of the opportunity. But yeah, so this is our 5th annual, and we're really looking forward to that. But I definitely would love to be able to continue to have chats. So if there's any other opportunities, I'd love to be able to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rollie. This was absolutely fabulous. Thank you.
So thank you again to all of our listeners, and I will see you guys on